people who've been listening to my YouTube commentaries, videos, understand that what it is that I'm trying to communicate is what I feel to be very important. What I want to communicate is to create a context, which is different from someone coming, like probably 99% outside of the entertainment part of YouTube, where they show like cute little videos and stuff. People are presenting us with facts, and some of them call themselves truthers, presenting the facts in this situation. And what I've been attempting to do is not so much deal with facts in terms of information and facts, but context. And context speaks about insight, understanding, even to some extent wisdom. The people I really appreciate are those teachers in my past and people that I've been influenced by have what I feel to be a wisdom. I'm going to try something today as well in terms of this video, is to, rather than just ramble through something, I'll stop as I collect myself to present the points I want to present. So here I go. Context. What I've been thinking about in the last while in regard to the circumstances that we're in, when I say the world is not what it appears to be, this is not anything new. This is something that has been covered on all levels throughout history. People have attempted with honesty, which is something that is very high on my scale of interaction with people. Honesty, the integrity and honesty, not the truth. I am not interested in truth, because honest people will admit if they're wrong or they've made a mistake, and they'll fix it. They'll fix it. If you do something, if you screw up in your relationship or in anything, if you're an honest person, you're going to admit and try to fix it. That's just why I like honesty. Now, within this realm of the world is not what it appears to be, the fight that I feel that we're in regarding Fukushima and the destruction of the species of life on this planet, of millions of species under threat because of this criminal industry called the nuclear criminal syndicate industry, something that seems to be very difficult to communicate in terms of the facts, because the facts are there. You just have to go on Dana Durnford's daily stream at 1:30 Eastern Time, 10:30 Pacific. I recommend it. I highly recommend it. Dana Durnford analyzes and dissects the anomalies that are being created in our heads about what has happened at Fukushima, 3 full core meltdowns and more. Now, I only say 3, but there have been more, because the entire coastline was ravaged, and all of those nuclear plants are most likely damaged and spewing their ugly toxic material into the environment. So, but the context behind this understanding that I have, which I had within a week, that within days, I came out within a week in a YouTube saying, people, we're in big doo-doo. We have to do something here. And I understood when I heard the first time after Chernobyl, I wasn't so much aware of 3 Mile Island, that I realized this was of a monumental significance. It's the most monumental event in the history of what we understand to be human life, and of probably all of life on this planet, even in terms of something hitting the planet or a major volcanic activity, fires burning for thousands and tens of thousands of years on the planet, creating CO2, whatever. This is the most significant event, especially because this technology was invented by people. People that are called scientists, people that are always, that we rely on, whether it's in the medical form or the physics or astrophysics and whatever you want to ascribe, the Newtonians and the Pythagoreans and all these people who give us explanation of the world, which is not what it appears to be, to try and tell us what the world actually is. And then it turns out, well, it's not really true. And if we want to go into Newtonian physics, and then we go into Heisenberg and quantum physics, and all of these aspects negate primarily what people said before, because the world is not what it appears to be on an ongoing basis. So here is my synopsis. Here's, and I haven't clicked yet to gather myself again. Here is my synopsis. What is very instrumental in, and this instrumental in keeping us in a state of not wonder, but perplexed feeling. We're perplexed about things. We don't know who to believe, because all the truth types that come out on the side, whether it's on science or religion, all the same, trying to capture us with their little stories and fairy tales about what the world really is. And the truther religious types tell us about a bearded guy in the sky, and you got to be a certain way in order to join that, and you got to give him a lot of money because the bearded guy in the sky is really bad with money, so you give him money all the time. And then you have the science type saying, well, you know, governments give us a lot of money because we're really making progress on figuring out what the world really is, and then they really never tell us what the world really is, or if they do tell us, we find out later on that it's all a bunch of hooey. And the greatest tool within this framework of pretending that someone knows more than someone else, and there definitely are people who know more than other people, as I have experienced personally with teachers I had who had gone through their own experience in making art and passing something on to me, not necessarily the facts and the techniques of and the way I would apply my craft. No, not that, but some kind of, they infused me with a desire to actually go through this experience in a, not just like for a week or a year or 5 years, but it's been 45 years since I graduated from art school. So this is something that is fundamental to my understanding of how things work. And one of the tools that are really used a lot now is what I see perceived to be doubt. And people are, now, this is really complex from the point of view because I function primarily on doubting. But to create doubt about something that is fundamentally realized within us, like the idea of Fukushima is just a fairy tale that people can just deny and forget about, it's the way that is done is by creating doubt in people's mind about this. And everyone knows. I've always said everyone knows this is a monumental event. Is it being covered? No. There are very few people that have actually understood this in a deep level, on a level that is required at this time to be able to communicate this event. And it doesn't mean, now this is fundamental, what I'm going to say now is fundamental to the nature of our being, that we have belief. Now I'm going to admit that I've not been in Fukushima. I have done research on Fukushima. I have listened to people that have understood and described the nature of this technology, and I've come to the conclusion that this is a technology that is fundamentally flawed to the level of creating such a destructive force on all biology on this planet. This is a conclusion I've come to. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a botanist looking at creatures, but I see evidence that has eliminated my doubt 100%, has eliminated my doubt 100%. But in order to keep people functioning on a level of dysfunction, not really considering what it is that we are facing at this time, doubt is a very important tool. And the element of doubt, whatever you want to, whatever the controllers that want to make sure that this enormous number of people, 7 billion people, are kept in a certain direction. This is something that is unequivocally true, that we're being manipulated. So how do we get out of this manipulation? And this is my point today. How do we become capable of withstanding this manipulation? How do I try the best I can to separate the wheat from the chaff? The truth is certainly part of this, but I can't rely on truth because it's manipulated. So how do I do it? How do I do it? And this is in my own personal life. How do I deal with doubt? And the context behind what it is that I'm trying to establish is we need to go inward. And the inner part of us is totally unexplored as far as I'm concerned. We've spent millions of years on this planet or 100,000 years, I don't know how long, but that inner part has not been explored. We haven't got a clue. We haven't got a clue, which is why art, and you look at people that have made art in the past, and the people that have money and are rich are clamoring to get a Vincent van Gogh into their collection, and they'll pay $500 million for it. Why is that? Why is that? Because when you look at a Vincent, you're going to get something about what it is that makes us us. It's like, you know, it's still a mystery, but it transmits this feeling. And this is what we're after. We're all after this essential feeling of understanding or being connected to that which makes us us. Now, doubt is something that takes us, in the worst sense, takes us away from this inner conviction and trusting ourselves. And how is it that we can work with doubt the way I do? The world is not what it appears to be. And quite frankly, I do not believe people that have brought us nuclear fission, called scientists, telling me that the earth is a ball and water sticks to this ball, and I've never seen water stick to a ball. And water always finds its level. Why do they call it sea level? They don't call it sea curve, they call it sea level. So just think about certain things, and I'm not making a pronouncement on what it is that the world actually is, because I have not seen it from what is called outer space. So I'm going to just say I have doubt. And this is creative doubt. This is not something like, oh, the dogma I'm supposed to accept from people that have gotten it wrong all the way through. These people, these scientists, have gotten it wrong all the way through. So why should I believe them? Why should anybody say, on the one hand, that I don't trust these bastards, and on the other hand say, oh yeah, they're right on this? Well, how about throwing it out and reevaluating the situation that we're in? What is the world? What is the world truly to each one of us? Now, the inner world is likely, that inner world that I talk about, the context is the inner world, is the most likely world that'll give us access to the outer world. But we can't get to the outer world or the external part if the internal work hasn't been done. And this is my point about doubt. We need to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is the essence of dealing with doubt. Vulnerability just means that we're comfortable with doubt, and we're not going to knee-jerk into dogmatisms as soon as that vacuum opens up that is called doubt. And the vulnerability is not being expressed by most people I see on YouTube, for example, or in day-to-day life. People are aggressive, vulgar, vicious. The attacks, the wars, the collective wars, the personal wars we fight, the animosities, and people are nasty and vicious. People betray each other, obviously. And this creates a feeling of not wanting to be vulnerable to protect ourselves. But this is an anomaly and an irony, because in order for us to protect ourselves, we need to be vulnerable. We need to be vulnerable from the point of view that we're not going to be undermined by the nastiness, the aggression. The aggression meaning that part which is trying to bludgeon and punish us into submission about something, because it's never going to work. It has never worked. It will never work. Because if it would have worked and the wars would have done their job on terrifying people and annihilating people through the most atrocious behavior imaginable, we would all be fucking enlightened. And you don't get enlightenment and brilliance out of this degeneracy of behavior. It doesn't work. So my point is, the context that, again, I'm trying to create as a painter, this is something that I try to infuse in all my paintings, this inner feeling, this inner understanding. The reason I paint abstract pictures that you see in the back is to create, like my mentors in the past, who were flawed, that were attached to this aspect of making art abstraction, non-representational work, is a way in order to make us feel more at ease with that doubt, which is why I like abstraction. I'm a representational painter. I mean, I use imagery, like, you know, that I use my astronauts as I don't know. They're quite wonderful to work with just as a concept. You know, the idea of being an astronaut going to the moon, whether they did or not, I don't believe they went to the moon. But the point is that we need to begin to feel more connected to letting the doubt lead us in the right direction through our vulnerability. And vulnerability does not mean we lash out and we attack. Vulnerability means that we actually become, well, the way I feel it in my own life, in my own work. Number one, I attempt, when I do something wrong, I want to be vulnerable enough to admit to myself to say I was wrong. There is a degree of vulnerability in saying I was wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? And in order to be able to move through something, we first have to clear this part of us up. It's an important aspect of our nature. I believe it's an important aspect of our nature. This feeling of vulnerability we need to carry around with us every day, which allows us to sympathize, empathize with people that are less fortunate than ourselves. And in the greater context, you know that this whole the shitstorm that's going to hit around children, what I've been saying, people do not love their children. And this is not something that is in their minds in terms of, oh, I don't love my... Of course they feel they love their children, but then why would you let them be vaccinated with 100 vaccinations by the time they're 5 years old? It doesn't make sense. Why do you regiment a human being just because they're younger than you or they're more vulnerable to take advantage of that? We need to deal with this and understand it. It's not just providing food and shelter. There is a lot more in order to understand and practice vulnerability. It has nothing to do with dominating any creature on the planet, especially our children. That's what I've been saying. And why do we allow these reptiles, these vultures and hyenas, to rampage through our china shop of vulnerability, meaning our children, and do whatever the hell they want? 2 million children are lost in the US alone every year. Worldwide, it's an amazing phenomenon. The pedogate stuff is the tip of the iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg is also reflecting on Fukushima, why people cannot wrap their brains around something so horrendous having happened, because we see vulnerable people being abused every day. So my point in terms of this context, and I didn't have to click, I think I've covered what I wanted to cover. There's probably other things that I wanted to say. But I think that standing on this soapbox of you, I really, truly appreciate it. And I appreciate people that come and listen and subscribe. And what I'm attempting to do is take this, use this medium to introduce people to something that I have understood over 45 years making paintings. And how do I apply that to my day-to-day life? It's not just a matter, oh, you know, you look into history and you see Caravaggio and you see chiaroscuro and you see this magnificent representation, Michelangelo on the ceiling. There is more to it than just being really good at what you do. It has to be applied to our day-to-day life. Otherwise, we're sunk, which is why I'm not a big fan of art history, because the people that were practicing it were fuck-ups in their day-to-day lives. They would probably have been better off I would gladly, like I say, live in mud huts with wood shoes to get rid of this technology, to get rid of civilization and culture the way we practice it. And I'll gladly give up all the great, magnificent accomplishments from Giotto, Michelangelo, even the guys, well, the cave guys, I'll leave them out of it. But everything that has come that is calling itself civilization and culture, shit. Screw it, fuck it, I'm not interested in it. I'm interested in people being good people, decent people, and being the best they can be at whatever it is they do and apply it to their day-to-day life. And I don't need any representations of magnificence and brilliance if it doesn't change a person's life on a fundamental level. And you can have arguments with me about this till the cows come home. I'm not going to change my mind on this, because if something is represented in an artwork, but we're going down the tubes with all of this, what's the point? What's the point? Who's going to see it in 100 years? Do you see what I'm saying? So vulnerability is practicing being comfortable with our inner self on some level. Every person has this feeling of vulnerability, and we need to accept it. And children have this in spades because they have not been corrupted by this attack mechanism that always supplants the vulnerability. When you hear people screaming and shouting and hurling abuses, even rightfully, this is our problem. This is our problem. And, you know, there are going to be people that differ with me because I always say, pick your fight. Pick your fight. Pick your fight. That's a great idea. Pick your fight. And fight doesn't mean like, oh, yeah. No, fight means strength and power. But how do we apply that in a real way that'll make a difference? What is it that was said? Who said it? The pen is mightier than the sword. I think this is part of that idea that bludgeoning with tools of destruction, implements of destruction through, you know, what is it that we can contribute that actually leads us into an inner life that allows us to fix the external that we've created? I think that's really important.